So this video documents something of a family project. The driving force behind this one was my daughter Alicia, who decided that we really needed beehives for our yard. She conscripted my son Kurt to help with the project. The video starts with the project actually underway, as I got pulled in to help after the kids got started. At this point, they've dipped into my pile of 8/4 Eastern white cedar. They had to resaw that on the bandsaw and plane it down to create some 3/4 inch material that they have edge glued to make wide side panels for the beehive boxes. In order to dress up the boxes a little bit, Alicia found a cool graphic of a bee, which we carved onto one side of the brood box using my CNC machine. I also carved the shop logo in one end of the lower box. To make those stand out, I just spray painted them black and then sanded off the excess paint to leave behind the black color on the graphics. We'd planned to join the sides to the ends of the boxes using a traditional box joint, but for some reason I couldn't find my box joint jig. I didn't feel like making another one, so we decided to use my lead jig and join the boxes using dovetails. It's not cheap, but I really like that the lead jig allows for variable pin spacing, and I've used it a fair bit over the years. I recently upgraded the straight bit to a spiral carbide bit from Lee, and I have to say I strongly recommend that. It cuts much more cleanly than the conventional bit. A little Titebond 2 glue on the edges of the tails, and then we clamp up the boxes, check them for square, and set them aside to dry. So we had enough material to make 5 boxes. You can see we've got 4 already made and all glued up with the dovetails. However, the first end piece, when I was cutting the tails, I had the board oriented the wrong way around in the jig, which meant the tails were facing the wrong direction. And the result of that means that when you assembled the box, the rabbet to hold the frames would have been actually oriented on the outside of the box, which is not particularly useful. One option would have been to make a whole new piece. So simply discard this, make a new piece. To do that, I would have had to plane up new material, glue it together, recut the rabbet, and that's quite a bit of work. It's actually easier. We just found a small scrap of wood, glued it in the existing rabbet. I'll clean up the edges of that now, and then we'll simply recut the rabbet in the correct side.
Yeah?
I think I'm hungry.
Oh, okay. I'm coming, baby girl. first. Yeah.
So here you see the collection of frame parts. Here's some example side pieces. Here's the upper rails. What's wrong with this picture? Guess we're gonna have to fix that one. Lower rails, and what happens is the lower rails fit in small dados in the side rails. The upper rails also do the same. There's a little Lego piece, a little loose here. Maybe we can do better when we cut these pieces. They're all taped together so that we can make all these cuts at once, cut the dados in the top and bottom, and then a little notch to the side to allow for some clearance as you insert the frames.
So I lost my audio again here, but the little end treatments on the top frames are cut using the stacked dado head cutter on the table saw with a crosscut sled. Just nibble away the material on one end, then change the blade height and cut the notch on each side. The grooves on the top and bottom rails are cut 1/4 inch deep along the axis of the rail, just using a standard single 1/8 inch thick table saw blade. With all of the end pieces taped together, we cut the notches in the top and bottom of the end pieces using a stacked dado head cutter on the table saw. For the little notch in the side, we also used the stacked dado head cutter and just nibbled away until we'd removed all the material we wanted. Then we can separate all the parts and start putting the frames together. Simple wood strips form the handles on the box ends. We used a raised panel cove bit to cut some finger grooves. The hive lid is a simple shallow box made out of 3/4 inch sides and a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood rabbited into those. The whole thing is covered with a thin sheet of aluminum to protect against the rain. All the exterior parts exposed to the weather got 3 coats of marine varnish.
So now that we've got the beehives all installed in place, I thought I'd show you kind of the details of them all coming together. We've got a aluminum sheet on the top to protect from the weather for the top. The top comes off. Underneath the top we have kind of an entrance system. The bees can come in through here, underneath the lip of the lid, come across and drop down through this hole. The upper box we actually probably won't use until next year. You can see that there's 10 frames in each box. The upper box will be where we actually get our first honey, probably next season. Underneath the upper box we have the queen excluder. This is a grid that prevents the queen coming up from the brood area. In this box, this is where the bees will primarily store their food. This is a feeder box. You fill that with a syrup, honey, or a sugar water liquid. And then underneath that, we have what will be the brood box. Again, 10 frames in that. This is where the queen will primarily lay eggs. And then underneath that, we have the base, which has a mesh to keep it clean and dry and good airflow. Then there's this little restrictor. You can have this, have a small opening for the bees, turn it this way, have a larger opening, or remove it entirely. And then the bees have wide open when you get the full colony going. So now we'll just put it back together. Little entrance restrictor is on there. Brood box sits on top of that, just sits there. Then the feeder box. Queen excluder would go on there, but again, that's probably for next season. So for this season, we'll probably just use the 2 boxes, allow the bees to make enough honey for them to get through the winter. And there we have it.
I'll cover the installation of the bee colony in a subsequent video, so for now, thanks for watching.